United States, and thank you for inviting me to this reading group. I'm just going to give a little PowerPoint that Travis has seen most of in an earlier discussion that we had. The topic is Confederate monuments, but I'm going to talk about racist monuments in general, because I think any reason for or against Confederate monuments that's plausible will also apply to non-Confederate monuments, whether it's Winston Churchill or an American founder or a Afrikaans figure or something like that. So as we could see in this on the right here, pioneer monuments are in play and being taken down. Monuments to founding fathers are being taken down, and it's all for the same general decolonialist or anti-racist reasons. And so my theses in my reply to Travis and my paper to Travis, that left-right volume, in which I have to it's a left-right volume, so I had to kind of play up the rightist element to it. I'm not going to do that here, really. But I'm going to argue that in a multiracial society with old racial grievances, we should conserve existing racist monuments when they have a reasonable pro-tribe mate interpretation, and remove them if they have only an anti-tribe mate interpretation. Interpretations here are like reasonable interpretations. That we should narrow the heritage gap between peoples in that society, so put up new monuments, statues, or whatever to underrepresented or oppressed peoples in that society. And with regard to new monuments that go up and revisions to old ones, insofar as we do so, we should avoid recrimination, aka keep it positive, and avoid divisive ideological commentary. I'm going to give two arguments. One's a consequentialist, one's a non-consequentialist argument. These appear in the readings that you had. The consequentialist argument is that if you're trying to keep a multiracial, post-colonialist, or former slaveholding society together, you should keep most of the monuments up, take down particularly inflammatory ones if they're not too important, add new ones, and keep it positive. And that's basically the Mandela policy with regard to South Africa. Okay, and here are some links that you could follow to see that policy. So a lot of people thought right after after Mandela was elected in '94 that well, surely they're going to just take down all the monuments to the Boers and so forth, and Mandela did not want that to happen. Okay. And we see that still in South Africa, although some monuments have been taken down. Most have not. And in very official places, in Pretoria's, Union buildings and so forth, you have, monuments to the Dutch settlers there and so forth. One great example is the Freedom Park monument, which it represents a sort of the democratization of South Africa, and the showcases the evils of apartheid in many ways. But it's just on the hill right next to the Voortrekker monument, which celebrates the Boer expansion and the Great Trek up north. And there's a road that connects them called Reconciliation Road and so forth. In I forget what it's called. I've been there, but the Castle of Good Hope. I guess that's right there in the title. The Castle of Good Hope. They recently put up these statues of various African tribal heroes, all next to each other. And most of these tribes fought against each other at some point, including against the Afrikaners. In Durban, I think this is, there was a statue of Louis Botha, and it remains, as far as I know, last I checked. But another one of Dinuzulu, a Zulu chieftain, was put up next to it. So this is this sort of idea here. As far as consequences go for multiracial societies with old racial grievances and injustices, civil breakup is worse than reconciliation. Mandela's policy makes reconciliation more probable than removalism does. So as far as consequences go, Mandela's policy is preferable to removalism. So in slogan form, who do you trust more when it comes to keeping decolonized multiracial societies together, Nelson Mandela or removalists? And my money's on Nelson Mandela. He did what many people thought to be the impossible. Is South Africa's future secure with regard to sort of having a peaceful multiracial society? I don't know, but insofar as it is, and it's probably because of a departure from Mandelian policy and ethos. So moving on to the non-consequentialist argument. I like to analogize a nation vis-a-vis its monuments to a household and family portraits. And that means that we don't sort of put things up in the national, household walls guided by the morality, the moral soundness of the people who we frame on our walls, but about sentiment, which is a wide category, I understand, but we're sort of it's about sentiments, it's about building family cohesion, building memory, and so forth. Not the morality of the people put up. So, for instance, you could I'm sure a lot of people who have had a grandfather who was good to you or something like that, but maybe was a murderer. Most people would put that person up. Maybe not everyone, but a lot of people still put someone who did some evil up for sentimental reasons in their household. So we have Mongolia putting up a huge statue to Genghis Khan. We have monuments to George Floyd going up here in America in just after the George Floyd murder, killing, whatever. And it isn't like George Floyd was a good person. No one's putting it up because he was a good person. They have sentimental feelings about George Floyd. They were traumatized by the George Floyd death. And so he was a home invader, armed home invader. There's nothing, it's not like he's like some sterling citizen by any means, okay? But it's understandable that these monuments go up because of the trauma around his killing. Okay, so the problem of racist monuments is not the immorality of the racism of the racist subjects. The problem is what is owed, as I understand it, what is owed to those in our house. Okay, so is putting up something in the national household or leaving something up in the national household, wronging those in our house. So if we assume, as I think we should, that people and peoples have a prima facie right to memorialize their greats, their heroes, and their ancestors, then what do we do when we hate the greats, heroes, ancestors of a people who are putative tribe mates? We can give up the right to do so if we feel that exercising that right is simply incompatible with the benefits of association and association is worth it. Or we can do the opposite and disassociate, concluding that the benefits of association aren't worth the cost of, among other things, being unable to memorialize our greats, heroes, and ancestors. Or a middle way, we can maintain and exercise the right and memorialize in a way that is conscientious about not being offensive to reasonable, otherwise willing putative tribe mates who have a claim to being tribe mates. So I give this example of, well, if we're going to analogize our monuments as sort of like how we decorate our national household, how we, well, at least our national mantelpieces and so forth, to an interracial household. And here's how I think an interracial household, like say, a household where one partner's black, one person's white in one of these societies with these old racial grievances would operate by. I think the partners would want each other to feel pride in their heritage. I don't think it would, I wouldn't want my partner not to feel proud of her heritage. I think this desire would be a prerequisite for each partner. Neither would agree to marry or stay married to a partner that wished anything different. I would not get married to someone who did not want me to feel pride in my heritage. If the partners had or have relatives or ancestors who disapproved of their relationship or tried to sabotage it, we would still put their pictures up, not only for personal sentimental reasons, which include gratitude and desire to honor them for other reasons perhaps, but for the sake of the children so they know who they are and where they come from. So for instance, my wife has a picture of her grandmother up. Her grandmother was not happy that her son married a woman of German extraction. Her grandmother was Norwegian. So her father, Norwegian, Lutheran, married a Austrian-German Catholic. She disapproved, felt it was a racial downgrade. She would have certainly disagreed with my wife's marrying me. She'd be appalled, I'm sure, if she knew my wife married me. And I'm happy to have her picture up. I want her picture up. She was a good grandmother in many ways and good to my wife, and I want my kids to know her and appreciate her. Even though if she had her way, they would never exist. Nonetheless, the interracial couple would curate pictures and heirlooms according to complicated competing factors, not least of which are aesthetic. They would choose items that cast their ancestors, families, and family heroes, so forth, in a good light, and yet didn't cast the other partners, ancestors, or family heroes in a bad light. And if one partner lost most of their family pictures in a fire, the other partner should be alert to ways to memorialize to bring balance into the household. Okay, so I give this example of, imagine that you have one partner who has as an ancestor Robert Lee, the white partner. And so the question is, should that picture go up? And then there's this other, like, just racist tchotchke that, they found at a garage sale. Should that go up? And, the one just doesn't have much meaning. It's really only interpretation is going to be offensive and so forth, unless, they're into it or something like that. But, even though in real life, the racist tchotchke represents something that was way less harmful to blacks than Robert E. Lee was, that's, not the only determining factor. The other factors are like how, important this is to family cohesion or family pride or whatever. So maybe when it comes to monuments, an example might be this Battle of Liberty Place monument that was taken down in 2015. I think it was one of the first that kicked off the monuments removal, but it had been moved earlier, and this particular inscription had been removed decades ago, and because it was erected and commemorating basically a post-Civil War kind of violent takeover by Confederate sympathists. Okay, so it said United States troops took over the state government and reinstated the usurpers, but the national election, November 1876, recognized white supremacy in the South and gave us our state. So it's hard not to interpret this statute in any way other than anti-black, and so it's much more reasonable to take that down than say a to Lee that isn't really trying to, nor I think is reasonably interpreted as deliberately provoking or insulting blacks or the white Northerners who died in the hundreds of thousands to defeat him. So we can do this for other peoples too. In not so long ago, maybe a decade ago now. This lovely monument. It's a really, I actually visited this summer. It's in Wyoming. It's in the battle, it's the Battle of Little Bighorn. And we have had for some time a monument to the 7th Cavalry. You could see this in the background, but only recently put up a monument to the Indians that died in Little Bighorn. And so this is called the Indian Memorial, and it's really quite good. And it does its thing without sort of deliberately insulting the 7th Cavalry who they killed. So to sum up again, the view is that in multiracial societies with old racial grievances, we should conserve existing racist monuments when they have a reasonable pro-tribe mate interpretation, and remove them if they have only an anti-tribe mate interpretation, narrow the heritage gap between peoples in that society. And for new monuments that go up in revisions to old ones, we should keep the monuments positive and make aesthetic decisions that do that, and avoid a divisive ideological commentary. Thank you very much. That's it.